Hey everyone, it's Bill Free, and I'm with a new individual to us. We don't know Chris Beckett, but I mean we haven't known him, and he's not a teacher, he's not a spiritual student, he's not a Course in Miracles or non-dual. He's actually more of a non-spiritual person that's spiritual. So that's kind of a paradox, I know. And thank you for being here, Chris. It's good to meet you in face to face for the first time.
That's
And
my
thank you for
pleasure.
being
Nice
here.
to be here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you want
So
to start? Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. And this is going to be a kind of a riff that we'll have with
Mm.
Chris in his non-spiritual spiritual conversation. Because I mean he's a little bit about Chris. He had an awakening experience that it came from out of nowhere. He wasn't a seeker. He wasn't looking at a teaching. He was very non-spiritual, as the title of his book, meditation. Oh, he has a meditation book called Meditation for Losers, but Chris is a non-spiritual spiritual person, as you'll get in just a minute. He's a musician and a music teacher. Are you still a music teacher, Chris?
No, that fell by the wayside during the lockdown. I picked up my art a lot, so I'm doing that most of the time. I'm also training to be a counselor as well. So I'm
Okay,
hoping to kind of merge the two.
right,
I was just starting a blog now about how to make art you really want to make, be an authentic artist. So
okay,
I'm kind of interested in the idea of, for me, I think using a vessel, like creativity has been such a big part of my life and such a big struggle as well. So using that as a vessel to kind of further this, what I think of as a natural process of awakening and liberation.
right, right.
I'm always interested in using my hands, I think. I think if I just talked about it, I don't think it'd be enough for me. I need to do something as well, make something with my hands. I still play guitar, I still write songs, don't finish them. I've got like, on my iPhone, I've got like 100 half-written songs, maybe a few full-written songs, but I need to find somebody to write the rest of the lyrics for me because I just get bored. I'm really good at starting a song and having the hook and everything, and then I'm like, oh, yeah. So I could do somebody else to help me riff off and write the rest of the lyrics too.
Right,
That'd be
right,
something
cool.
nice to do.
The I watched your interview with Rick Archer on
Yeah.
Bat Gap. It was about 8 years ago, and you had just about 2 years in, or 2 years prior, you had an awakening experience, this
Yeah.
spontaneous experience, and it seemed like it was very fresh
Mm.
in your communication with Rick on that episode, and I really enjoyed listening and watching that conversation. I felt like Rick is a master interviewer, and he has a very broad understanding and different
Mm.
uh, uh, places he can pull spiritual ideas from. And I felt like he dug in a little bit in asking you specifically what your experience was like, and in
Mm.
that awakening experience. And I think one of the things that drew my attention to the uniqueness of it was you had these what did you call it, these mini meditations, or what did you call it?
Yeah, micro meditations. Yeah.
Micro meditations, and
Yeah.
that was almost like an internal mechanism that turned itself on, it looked like, And from that experience, because you made a statement that said that there was no choice in your awakening. There was no
Yeah,
choice
very
about it.
choices. Yeah,
So it was a something that sort of happened of its own. It seemed to begin with these micro meditations, and I love that because I think that the micro meditations is what you're onto. I think that's the most significant element of your awakening experience, and I think a lot of people have that and never recognized or never carry it to fruition. And you were curious about it, and you sort of, it began as a something, and then it unfolded into like a total life change experience for you.
Yeah, it had so much momentum for me, that awakening, and it propelled me for the next 5.5 years. So I think I was lucky in a way. I didn't have the kind of, well, what do I do next? It really felt, to varying degrees, somebody like God was pushing my back, pushing me forward to varying degrees. It was very quick for the first 3 months. And then for the next few years, when I did that interview, it settled down into a less, it still had momentum, but it was less. And then the last 2 years really got going. And the last year was yeah, had the most momentum.
You mean
so I think I was lucky.
this past year?
No, this is
Oh, you mean
4.5 years ago now.
Okay.
So if I explain, I kind of divide the journey. I use language, makes sense to me, and because it feels right for me. So I had kind of 5.5 years is what I call the awakening journey. So I had this initial awakening. I went through this awakening journey, and then there was a shift there into what I call liberation. And then there's been a liberation journey for the last 4.5 years, and that will continue forever until I die, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, I use that different language and segment them up because there is a very big water change in the liberation. It's very different to the awakening period. They feel very different from what I can remember. Sometimes it's hard to, well, yeah, in some ways it's incredibly hard to remember, but I do have a sense of what it used to be like during the awakening period.
Right.
So I divide into those two sections essentially.
Right. So you sort of can sort of phase it in as you're looking back at the way it unfolded.
For me, they were kind of like, I've kind of used the word of doors and windows. So like a window would be a glimpse, and then it opens and then closes. I never had glimpses, or maybe I did have glimpses when I was younger, but I just ignored them. I didn't really pay attention to them. I probably did, I imagine. I think I was wired that way, and I probably did have stuff when I was younger, but I'm not particularly a self-reflective person. I don't sort of go, oh, what happened there? I just kind of go, oh, well, and then I just forget about it. I've kind of got that personality. So, what I was talking about now. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I had these doors, which makes it easy for me to kind of say, this is when this changed and this is when that changed. Yeah. I've come to realize that a lot of people have something more diffuse, like a kind of gradual change. But for me, there was definite like, yeah, this was when I had my initial awakening. This was when the liberation happened. And this, this is when it kind of changed and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, for those that are listening and watching, you can find out more about Chris at a website, wisdomfreed.com. Wisdom, FREED.com. And on that website, Chris, you talk about, you have a homepage about me, a coaching page,
Yeah.
and what is it that you coach?
Um, it's helping people because I see this as a natural process. So when I say non-spirituality, my approach is a non-spiritual approach to this natural process, essentially. So my focus is always on the everyday, and that ties in with the micro meditations. So I coach people how to have an integrated everyday approach to awakening and liberation. And from my experience, the more integrated it is, the more it propels itself forward, so to speak.
Right.
It's like a natural process that wants to unravel. This sense of illusory self wants to unravel.
Yeah.
And the more integrated into everyday life that process is, the quicker it happens. So for me, it was very, I think it happened 5.5 years is relatively, it seemed quick to me anyway. Not that there's still a journey going on, I want to point out. It's just a different journey, but that kind of awakening journey, it was facilitated by an everydayness. So I talk about in the book about, things like being in the supermarket were really sacred. There were places where I really kind of grew, and just like talking to the checkout person and just being in the world and integrating with the world. And what I've seen is some spirituality tends to not do that. They tend to pull away from that and tend to they tend to have two worlds. They tend to have a spiritual world and their normal life world. So when people go to a satsang or something, they change into one world, and then it can be very subtle, but I've seen it with people I've known as well, and in the spiritual groups and the meditation groups I've been in, there's this kind of siloing of worlds. And I've observed that doesn't facilitate the process as fast as just integrating the process. So I really, through the micro meditations, help people become more present. So what I found really works is just moments of presence scattered throughout the day. So rather than having like a big meditation, I've always found what works best for me is having a few minutes here, a few minutes there. It seems very simple, like just when you go to the toilet, just take a few breaths, but the whole thing really adds up. And because you're doing those things in your everyday life, it all seems to weave in together quicker and facilitates the process to happen faster.
Yeah.
That's really what I teach. And I also sort of impart to my clients the idea that it's not just about presence. They have to it's important to become present and have moments of presence, but a big part of the process is also letting go of that as well, and just allowing yourself to kind of be human and be messy. That for me in my journey, that was when it really started to pick up the process. Because being present is great, but it can become a kind of default setting where you're continually trying to, find awareness in the situation, and it can become a strategy to sort of avoid your humanness in some way. So I think those two things, those moments of presence coupled with just letting yourself be, just letting yourself live in the world, those two things kind of support each other. Because if you just let yourself go in the world, I realize, you can just spiral out and just be lost to the fairies for however long. So the presence kind of supports that. But if you just have the presence, then you can get into this isn't spiritual. I'm at the supermarket now, so this, this isn't spiritual, and you're missing out on a huge opportunity, I think.
Yeah.
It's when it's in the real world, you see how people really are. You see, and this idea of, there's spiritual people and there's not spiritual people, it just breaks down. It's not true. And people are different at different times, and you can always learn so much from so many people.
Yeah.
It's really the real, just normal everyday life is what did it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a non-seeking spirituality and an authentic being
Yeah.
experience. And that actually, you're right, because it's interesting that all spiritual seekers, before awakening occurs, uh, they they find that they needed to let go of the seeker
Mm.
for awakening, before awakening would reveal itself.
Yeah.
uh, and you're sort of going about it reverse. You're not a seeker, you're not a, or you weren't a seeker, you're still not a seeker, but you weren't a seeker, you weren't looking for the experience, but there were a few things that you were doing in a not doing, or a not trying mechanism. You were, from what I can tell, you were more a self-help uh, seeker prior
Yeah.
to that happening, and you developed this little technique for yourself, this
Mm.
micro meditation experience that, in my mind, for me, my thought is that, just like you said, that there was never a choice. In
Mm.
my mind, awakening finds us,
Mm.
and we actually find us. Our
Yeah.
true nature finds us in our readiness to awaken, and all of its myriad of different flavors.
Mm.
And when I first saw your email that actually went to Susan, one of our other uh, podcast hosts, and the manager of we have a spiritual community called Evolve that she manages. And when I first saw the description of your non-spiritual spirituality, I thought, why would I have an interest in this in this guy? We're about awakening.
Yeah.
We want to help people wake up. We want to help them to self-realize,
Yeah.
and we have many different tools in supporting that. And when I looked at your email a second time, I thought, wow, this is just another flavor of awakening. I'm resonating with this. And then when I saw your website, I thought, I got to watch that Bat Gap interview. And I just really love how consciousness put you, you speak about the messiness of it, being yourself, not
Yeah.
having, I like what you just said, that not having two, a spiritual you and your personal you.
Mm.
You've sort of, you're that organic phenomenon of awakening.
So that's the joy about, because the liberation is different to the awakening, and the liberation, the kind of sense of what happens is, for me, I kind of thought about the words, and I thought about what other people have said about it. And for me, the sense is there's no sense of the center anymore. So you find yourself everywhere at the same time. So like I look at you and I see myself, and it's not like a reflection thing, it's just a direct thing. And I look at the table, and there's the same amount of content in everything. So I look inside and it's got the same quality to it. And that's what was different in the awakening. There was still, it became very subtle at the end, but there was still like a sense of a center inside. And habitually I'd self-refer inside. In fact, I was talking to my friend yesterday about this. The first time I realized that something had changed was I was having an argument on the phone with somebody, and I was having all the normal reactions I have when I have an argument, you know, if you have an argument with somebody. But I was like thinking, I'm not looking inside. And then I realized it would change. It's like, instead of the arrows pointing inside, this locus inside, it's like they all pointed out. And then, you know, then I kind of realized that, yeah, gosh, the whole sort of perspective changed. And yeah, there's a sense of bliss. There's always a sense of being yourself. You're always home. I'm very interested in the idea of, you know, the first Australians have the idea of the dreaming, and the idea of the dreaming is that all time is in here. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's not so much no time, it's more like all time is here. I really enjoy history now because there's a sense of the history being here as well. So it's very different to the experience of the awakening process. And I think it's quite useful to sort of show the difference, to see the kind of, I don't want to kind of give the idea of, oh, you're moving along the process, you're higher up or anything like that. It's more like it's more like growing up from being a teenager into an adult, although that metaphor also has connotations of, you know, linear kind of going up connotations as well. I think I'm rambling slightly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, experientially, I feel that it is helpful for people to hear this non-spiritual, organic spirituality. You wouldn't call it a spirituality. I mean, maybe you do. I do. But it's a non-seeking spirituality. The words that you use are of a spiritual kind of a bent. And even meditation for losers, you know, I would retitle that meditation for winners, because when you employ meditation, not the old-fashioned way, and not even the, you know, the well-known Vipassana or the transcendental, I more resonate with the micro meditations, because that was what initiated my own awakening experience. I never called it micro meditations. They were what I call short moments of awareness. Many times becomes a new default. It becomes a new experience. And I noticed years ago that when I first picked up A Course in Miracles, I would remember the title of one of the workbook lessons, and I would see it in my mind, and I started noticing that the noticing of the image of the print of the title, and I started noticing that awareness was something it was another kind of a feature that we have that I wasn't conscious of until I started trying to use it for memory, for photographic. You know, photographic memories are initiating that intrinsic element of awareness, and that awareness to me is the same as your description for micro meditations. It's just initiating that quiet presence. It's where there's no label, there's no judgment. It's just being. And I would say that you fell into that discovery, it sounds like.
I think so, yeah. I think what I kind of figured in my mind, I kind of thought about, you know, what's happened to me quite a lot, because I didn't ask, you know, I didn't seek it out, and yet all this has happened to me. So I've kind of got a kind of what, what's this about, kind of thing. And my sense is there are other people out there who are either in some kind of process, or they're interested, or they're curious in these ideas, but they just don't resonate with the kind of because spirituality has a very specific kind of languaging. It's almost like its own languaging. That's like the first time I came to when the awakening happened, and I sort of started to look at all these videos and stuff. I was kind of like, wow, this is all a bit strange. It kind of, to me, felt strange. It's like, because of the language and the stuff, the kind of, like stuff like, oh, there's nobody here, or something like that. I was like, yes, there is. You're sitting on stage. And stuff like that is still weird to me, if I'm being honest. And so I want to put something out there, just on the possibility that other people feel, kind of feel that. They kind of feel, oh yeah, I don't really sort of, I'm interested in what it is, but I don't identify with the normal vernacular around it. That's what non-spirituality is trying to do. That's what I mean by non-spirituality. I don't think myself, I've sort of kind of solidified it enough, if I'm honest. It's kind of still a moving idea, but the idea is to appeal to people who are looking for a different way in, because my figure is, if there are more, it's not that I have massive respect for spirituality and religion, to be clear as well. It's not a dismissal of any kind of, I have immense respect for all of it. But having another way in is always helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Because it can just appeal to some folks to go in that way, and they just, oh yeah, they could just kind of resonate with the idea of finding the kind of presence in the supermarket. That for me lights me, that for me really kind of, yeah, that's what it's about, you see. For me, it's never been about, because I've been in and out of I've done meditation for years, it's not like I'm a stranger to this whole spiritual thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had deep experiences in meditation. And my figuring is, must be probably some folks out there who are kind of in the same boat as me. Yeah. So I wanted to offer something that could help them.
Yeah.
From that specific angle.
Yeah, I like the angle too, because there's some people aren't interested in a teacher. They're not interested in a spiritual community or a particular tradition. And your example is that you can have an awakening without any of that. It doesn't preclude that. And then also what's interesting to me is that you're non-spiritual, but you found us through the Awareness podcast. So there's an antenna of interest that is interested in these matters, and yet it's not initiated by a seeking mechanism. No,
I think I'm interested in how I fit into the whole thing. I think maybe that's why I listen to the podcasts and
how you what
podcast, kind of how I fit into the whole thing. I think
okay, yeah,
kind of work out.
Yeah,
because it still feels like just like, in some ways, like the liberation was kind of a big shock. Adyashanti talks about that in his book, and I kind of there's big correlates between his story and mine. So that's why he wasn't my teacher during my awakening, but he was the only teacher that I thought he kind of followed.
Right. That's in his book, The End of Your World.
Yeah, that was my Bible basically for my awakening.
Yeah, that is a great for anyone that is post-awakening or interested in a clear sort of description of what
Mm.
awakening looks like, and even those that don't awaken, that have a he talks about awakening in that book in a example of a rocket taking off,
Yeah.
and those boosters, they do the liftoff, but they don't always leave the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You end up falling back into your old patterns.
Yeah, that's the awakening. Yeah, I mean, you I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking, oh, that rocket ship analogy, there isn't a better one. It's just like, it's really good. It's really accurate, because that's how it feels as well. Because the awakening is, you kind of got something coming and going. It can be very subtle, but there's still some kind of coming and going. There's still some sense of a thread of a time. Like you still experience yourself as a kind of thread, is the best way of, it's very subtle, but you kind of, and if you imagine in the future, it has some kind of reality in the future. And if you imagine in the past, it has some kind of reality in the past. And then that all disappears. It's like everything just implodes on itself in liberation, and everything's just welded together, time, space, no time, no space. It's just all welded together. And it's that kind of rocket ship going up, and that's what the shock was. I think he's talked about that as well. It's just so unexpected in some ways. It was so unexpected in how simple it was and how innocent it was. And the innocence never goes away. So this idea of beginner's mind, it's always like, I was talking to my friend yesterday, and she saw me the day before, and I sort of was going through something, like some stuff came up. And then she saw me yesterday, and she was kind of like, oh, and she was like expecting me to talk about the stuff which happened yesterday. And I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. I lay down for a couple of hours and, worked itself through. And then I got a massive headache for the next 12 hours, which is my brain rewiring. Adyashanti talks about his brain being rewired as well. But I get headaches with it as well. Maybe he's got headaches. Maybe he's just tougher than I am. But yeah. So there's no sense of like a thread anymore. So you just, when you're in something, and then you're in the next thing, and there's no sort of layover anymore. There's no trail. I know people would use karmic trail. I guess that's what but I maybe wouldn't use that language.
Yeah. In my mind, awakening has a way of collapsing the karmic trail. And I don't, I'm not a teacher of karma. I just know that you can use that term as residual energy, patterns. And I don't even know how incarnation works. I never remember a past life experience, so I don't know about those things, but I have followed teachers that talk about karma and the karmic energy of past lives that, until you clean that up, and I don't know about that stuff. But what I do know is that or what I, in my own experience, this has been my life purpose. Once I got my head out of the clouds with drugs and alcohol, and I became interested in religious and in spiritual matters, and then I just knew within my own experience that this is what I'm here for. That I'm here for not to be a great teacher or to, to wake up the world, but I'm here. And this is my purpose for being here, is for my own
Mm,
direct awakening experience. And it just seems like that's what all of us are here for, is to have our version of that in all of its, or not maybe, if lifetimes are true, past lives, incarnations are true, which
mm,
I think they are. The thing that I love about the spiritual path is that uh, religion was trying to speak to humanity. And it was doing the best that it could. And it was,
mm,
what I love is that it was totally wrong, but it had a pointer there that kept
mm,
us maybe thinking about something higher than the human experience, maybe allowing, God to be real in our lives, until we realize that there is no God out there. And what I like about spirituality and your situation and many others that have awakening or a liberation experience is that uh, everyone has access to it.
mm.
Everyone has. You don't have to be on a spiritual path. You don't have to be on a religious path. You don't have to have any kind of prerequisites other than, I think, in my mind, uh, I think there's something that we're all looking for, and most of us just don't know what it is. And you stumbled onto this thing because something in you was looking for something else.
Mm.
I mean, that's just what it seems like. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been on the self-help path. You wouldn't have been created these micro meditations. There was something
Yeah,
that was moving in you to
yeah, yeah.
to find you.
I think part of why I've never felt spiritual is I've always felt I've always felt that connection to life. Like I think I've felt that ever since I can remember. So I've just taken it for granted, I think.
Yeah.
I'm good at just taking these things for granted, I think. And I think that's partly why, I remember I once went to some meeting, it was somewhere, and my friend invited me, and it was like we had a buffet, and like it's a buffet, we're talking about normal things, and then the kind of the energy of the room completely changed, and the language completely changed, and people were talking about, oh yeah, and this happened on my holiday, and I felt at one with everything, and that I'm not judging, but to me it just felt very like, but it's here. That was my kind of, I remember looking at the coffee table, like looking out of the trees and going, yeah, but it's here. So I think if I'm honest, I think that's the oddity of it, is I can't quite, because it's like it's always here. It's like, and it's always been here. I think, if I'm being honest, it's always been here for me. I'm not going to deny that I seem to be very kind of built for this spiritual stuff.
Right.
Like
Right.
my, personality, my biology seems to be kind of built for it naturally. Like I think I did have a sense that I could awaken at any time, but I was just like, no, just no, thank you. I'd rather just live my life, thank you.
Right.
So for me, it wasn't ever like, oh, I'm running towards something. It was more like, I'm stopping it from happening. So my
Hmm.
sense was, yeah, it could just sort of bubble up and happen.
So,
That pregnancy of life was always there, I think.
yeah.
And I just assumed everyone else
Who
experienced.
is, um, who is Chris Beckett?
Who is Chris Beckett?
Yeah.
That's me.
Okay.
I would say the idea of, I know people say, oh, we're not the body, and you know, what happened with the liberation is it just collapsed into everything. So if you say, you know, who's Chris Beckett, I'll just say it's me. But there's no like, I'm not like pointing to a center anymore. But it feels very natural to just say it's me.
Right. Right.
So the kind of there's like a deep naturalness that came with the liberation. There wasn't like a kind of, oh, am I out there? Am I in here? Am I? Because you find yourself everywhere equally. So everything settles down. There's a complete relaxing. I remember before, like a few months before the liberation happened, the Christmas was extraordinarily painful because I'd have these times when I'd feel myself out there and it felt so far away. It was just agony. And it was this dynamic of everything, the quality of identity settling equally everywhere. That's what was happening. So, yeah.
Can you say more about this me that you point to when you say that Chris Beckett is me? Tell us more about the me.
It's very difficult to talk about because it's almost like a foreign talk. It's almost like hearing a foreign language that you don't understand. I do understand what you're saying, but I just find myself everywhere. But at the same time, I'd always say, yeah, I'm me. That's as, I don't know, I don't think I can go any, ask the question again.
Well, can you tell us more about the me? Tell us more about me.
It's a, yeah, I think the closest I get, it's a shared reality. So it feels, gosh, I'd never think about this kind of stuff ever. It's a sense of intimacy. Yeah, I think that's what I'd say more than anything. Yeah, it's a sense of deep intimacy. So I wouldn't say, yeah, I would say that's me. Yeah, just a really deep intimacy, like a really deep natural intimacy, not like, oh, I'm trying to be intimate. Oh, I'm trying to like this person. Oh, I'm trying to, none of that doesn't make any difference about how I feel or think. So there's no struggle with the, so I know quite often people say, well, I'm not my thoughts. That makes no sense to me anymore. I understand what people mean, like kind of mentally, but it makes no sense somatically.
Right.
Because
right.
my thoughts are part of me and everything's part of me, but it's all happening with that non-identification. So I can even be just as distracted as I used to be. I'm not, but I'm still not distracted. It's always being grounded in the being. It doesn't matter what's happening. And was a huge shock and relief for me, because that releases so much energy in the body, because then you're not holding back at all. In fact, you just lose the ability to hold back. The ability is just taken away from you. So one of the biggest challenges has been, and Adya talked about this as well in his End of Your World book, there's so much more energy, like a lot more energy. Like I thought it was a lot during the awakening, and then the liberation journey started to kick in after 6 months. It's like, yeah, this is a lot more energy. So getting used to that and integrating that has been quite a journey.
How
really.
has your life changed post awakening?
Hmm.
And once you started realizing that this choiceless experience occurred, how has your life changed?
It's got it's very joyous, I have to say. Um, and I get to be myself around others. That's the biggest joy. I don't have to be anything else but myself. And that's a real joy, just to be around people. So I'm feel way more integrated into life, and I'm much more interested in being in life, even than I was before. It's this real interest of being like in the heart of life. So that's different, because when I was growing up, I was a little bit standoffish, I think. And that got less with the awakening, but that totally changed with liberation stuff. I mean, I do like to spend time on my own. I live on my own. Sometimes I don't want to be around people, but that's just sometimes everyone's like that. But on the whole, I really, really enjoy being around people and just seeing people do their lives. It's just like it's kind of it's amazing, really. It's like a kind of secret. It's, yeah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing that you get to experience that intimacy collectively. It's not just like one uniform blob of intimacy, which I guess would be when you leave the body. Maybe it's like that, I don't know. But I think the great thing is we get to experience that intimacy together. That feels really precious.
Hmm.
Um, really interested in history now, and I never used to be. And I'm super interested in stories. This was the bizarre thing, is the moment I knew kind of in my bones that I'd never believe any story my mind ever said anymore. I just gained this massive reverence and interest in story and what story is and what it does. And I've done a lot of writing in the last few years, just because I'm really interested in telling stories and sort of working it out to myself. It's just fascinating. So what I feel is just a real grace for me is I just get to be myself. And there isn't that, I can remember it became very subtle at the end of the kind of awakening stuff. There was a kind of but there was still a kind of positioning. There was still a kind of perspective on things. I kind of go, oh, I can look at this from here, I can look at that from there, and that's not there anymore. It's just, I wouldn't know how to do that anymore. It's like it feels like when I kind of if I need to think about it, I think, well, that's a superpower. I just don't know how people, I just don't know how, and I know it sounds very naive in a way, but I just don't know. It's like a language that you just don't understand anymore. It's just like la 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 la. It just doesn't make sense anymore. And you're just like, it just makes no sense. Separation makes no
Yeah.
sense anymore. It's just like occasionally you get a little stuff coming up, but even that separation isn't separate,
Yeah.
which makes it actually more painful, I think, but fine, because it's not separate. But you kind of get taste, little tiny little perfumes of it coming back, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it just feels like a light. I watched the video when I was doing the wisdom freed thing. I was like, I don't know who this person is. I just couldn't relate to that person. I knew it was me. I knew. I don't mean, I know what was happening. I knew my boyfriend was in the back room. I knew all that, but I didn't it's almost, yeah, it's like a something, yeah, something is over. It's not that it, you know, obviously I'm going to keep growing as a human being, and I've got as much to go as anybody else. I'm definitely a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to, my big ambition is to be a nice person. I would say that's my biggest ambition. People can just say, oh yeah, Chris is a nice person. That's good enough for me, beyond being, oh, he's a great person, just a nice person. Just a nice
Yeah.
person. Go on,
Yeah.
He's
That's
funny,
cool.
he's easy to get, he was just himself.
Yeah.
It was,
Authentic. That's I like the comments that you had in your bat gap that when you with Rick when you talked about you began just being honest with yourself, and that's what authentic. I think that's authentic spirituality.
yeah.
And I love your answer to who are you? I'm me.
Yeah.
Who is Chris Beckett? I am me. Well, I love that because that's an authentic response of consciousness that is Chris Beckett. It's also Bill Free. It's the same me. I could say I'm me, and it's the same me that you say is your me.
Occasionally I get like, because most of the time I don't even notice any of this unless I'm talking with somebody, or if I'm driving my car or stuff, listening to a podcast. I think that's why I listen to the podcast. It's a nice thing to fall asleep to. The voices are nice, and I like the energy. And most of the time, yeah, I think Moody talked about this. Maybe it's just that self-referential thing just goes. So you're never keeping tabs on yourself. And when I talked about, the coaching, the presence, and the just letting yourself be, that's what I'm talking about. You're not keeping tabs on yourself. You're not in a conversation and you're going, I'm present, I'm being cartoon, exaggerated, but,
Yeah.
to kind of make the point. You're just letting yourself fall into the conversation, and you're unraveling all these ideas. Oh, I'm a spiritual person. I'm meant to say this, and oh, I've got to slip in. So what's all this life about? And all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you start to really enjoy life, and then that's when the process really starts to unravel, because you're just like, I just want that. I just want to be in life. I don't want anything else. I just want to be in the swamp of life.
Yeah.
Drowning in the swamp of life. I just wanted that. And that's when the kind of process just really unravels. And so I think that's a big thing of what I help people do, really, is just help them, because I've noticed a lot of spiritually orientated people have a kind of mistrust of life to some degree. And maybe that's what led them to be attracted to being in a spiritual community or practicing a spiritual seeking or whatever. And so I think part of my role is just to really open people up to how glorious just being in normal life is. I love where I come from. England is a kind of country of two halves. Probably shouldn't say that. But yeah, the north of England is very different to the south. It's much more chatty. People talk to each other. People say hello when you're going for a walk, even in Smithies, a small city of Lancaster. People say hello, when you're walking on the canal to wherever I'm going. And I just love all that. I love all those little interactions. And people call you love, when you go and get like a sandwich or chip, bacon sandwich, do you want ketchup, love? No, I hate ketchup. All that I love all that kind of stuff. And that, for me, that's the sacred,
Yeah.
And I really want people to kind of experience that, because a lot of the people I've kind of worked with, when they come along, they have a kind of, this is, spiritual. And then as soon as I leave this, and then you know, this idea that, oh, I'm going to the shopping center and it's commercial and it's not spiritual, and it's a big missed opportunity for integration and for just enjoying life more, because that's what it's really about. It's not about, it's just a natural process unfolding, so you can enjoy life more. But enjoy life, I don't want to say as it's meant to be enjoyed, because that's not the right term, but enjoy life in its sort of simplicity and naturalness.
Yeah, yeah, an effortless experience of life.
Yeah,
and in its unfolding.
yeah.
And before we go, I would love to hear if you could give us a couple examples of a micro meditation.
Yeah, so oh gosh. Yeah, so the big one I've been doing at the moment, and actually it's been really helping me, is the screenshot meditation. That's the one where you just kind of take in a scene, and it's called screenshot because the metaphor is you're taking a screenshot, as in like on your phone.
Yeah.
So I live in the countryside. I've got trees at the back, and I just open my door and I just look out, and I've been doing this for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sort of, instead of not meditating at all, apart from doing that. And I just feel myself slow down. It's really nice. Just watch the birds fly around. There's loads of birds here. It's a big place where geese land. And there's just something that slows down, and there's a real, I feel, because I'm not, I can, my sort of personality is quite fast in some ways. I'm quite an introvert, but I'm a kind of introvert extrovert. So just looking at those trees, and you just feel myself tap into nature. I know nature's me, but there's and it just slows me down and makes me feel a bit more, so that's been beautiful. And I've been doing that one for a while. I think the other one, just taking 3 breaths, I mean, that, or 1 breath. I remember, and that one is because it's so simple, you can use it anywhere. I remember the last 6 months of my sort of awakening before the liberation, it was just laughable of how much was falling away, and how everything was just changing so much, you know, like, and just going to the toilet, and sometimes I just go and didn't want to go to the toilet. There's just a brilliant way of getting out of any kind of situation, and just taking a few breaths, just and just slowing down again, and just feeling that presence. It just really helped me enormously, because I'm not particularly, I can definitely run away with myself, and I still can, you know, I really can. I still really think, I need to slow down more, you know. I don't have I don't have that struggle, don't have the suffering anymore, don't have the identification, but you know, and in some ways I've had to find ways of slowing down more, because the energy's increased so much more. So you get so much more energy and it doesn't ever feel like there's a limit on it.
Right.
During the awakening, it felt like there was, okay, it's gonna, now it just carries on and on and on and on. I don't know, maybe I'll die if it just carries on and on. I have no idea. But so just slowing down more, like, yeah, that's really those two ones. Just take a few breaths. I continue now. It's just really helpful, because it's not like, oh, you know, you had an awakening, oh, you're in this liberation journey. Now you're, you know, it's there's always a sense, there's always a sense of presence, but that presence, that quality of presence can change. So I can, you know, I can appreciate that. I can be more appreciative in a slower body approach to that presence, or I could be just flying through that presence. And that's not, you know, the slower, more present I am, the more helpful that is for other people. I'm going to be more considerate of them. I'm going to notice them more. I'm going to, you know, all of that is endless. How to just be a nice person. It's, you know, so this, the liberation and the awakening are kind of, they're just part of a whole package of, I would say, growing up, you know, and knowing yourself and not being an ass. You know, when I was young, I was so creatively ambitious. My creative ego was big. And that was where my struggle was. That's where the rubber hit the road, as Adyashanti says. That's definitely where. And you know, I met so many great people, and I could have had so many great creative encounters with those people, but because I was like, no, I want greatness, I want to be known as like a genius, I just ran forward to that. And just, you know, I don't think I was that, hopefully I wasn't that bad, just flinging them aside, but maybe I did, I don't know. In some instances, I don't think I was that bad, but you know, there's real like grief around that now. I feel it now. You know, it's kind of like just a missed opportunity being around, you know, great people. And I don't want that, you know, that's the great thing about this whole awakening and liberation business is now I just appreciate, you know, I've got that real deep appreciation.
Yeah.
So I never sort of feel like looking over people in a way, like just glad, you know, just I've got a real interest in people and how they're doing and going on for them.
Yeah. More compassion, more connection.
Yeah,
you don't know people, you end up having this connectedness with everything.
Yeah. And the other one thing I will say is, but I'm also very, very, very comfortable never talking about any of this. So there's never any like, I'm never in a conversation where I'm thinking, I just want to talk about this, just bring it in, just bring it in.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Like if someone talks about it, it's fine. But like I never talk about it with my mum, very rare. And I'm fine, I don't care. So that's in a way a massive liberation in itself. It's like, if I never talked about it again, it'd be fine. It'd be weird, but it'd be fine. So I'm just as happy talking about anything, you know. I'm just as interested in like what's coming out new on Netflix this month as I am in this, if I'm truly honest. Because
so we're going to sign off, and before we do, I just want to remind everyone that you can find Chris Beckett's book. Actually, the Meditation for Losers book is free on his website, wisdomfree.com. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Chris, thank you for saying yes to this connection, and I look forward to, maybe we'll have you on another interview or one of our conferences, and people can get to maybe talk to you directly.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting.
In that way, that would be fun. So I'm sure that we'll be in touch. And if you have a question for Chris, just contact him. He's got a contact tab on his website. Or if you have a question that you would like for us to ask Chris, we'll make that contact. Maybe we'll do another interview with him. This has been delightful for me as the interviewer, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you during this broadcast. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. See you, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.